Ask George is brought to you by International Cricket Tours. ICT are cricket travel specialists with decades of experience taking supporters all over the world. Get in touch with their expert team today to plan winter trips to the Caribbean, Pakistan, New Zealand, as well as the Women's Ashes. Love cricket, love travel, choose International Cricket Tours. Okay, so after day 3 of the second test at Trent Bridge, it's time once again to Ask George. Okay, David Thomas asked first up, why are England so bad at bowling at the tail? He reckons the third worst in the world at bowling at number 9 to 11.
I wish I knew where you got those stats from. It would really help in writing a piece. Were they that bad? I don't know. I thought West Indies played really well. Didn't you?
Yeah, I thought they coped with it well, yeah.
And I thought it was a real flat wicket. I mean, it does seem odd, doesn't it, that if you've bowled a side to the brink of dismissal, they're 9 down, you suddenly adopt new tactics. And it does seem odd that they had a guy in who's a good player, Justin Silva, really good player, I think, but he averages 25 at test level, he bats at number 7, and you're suddenly admitting you're sort of not trying to get him out in a way anyway, or you're saying the best chance to get him out is him trying to hit 6. So I don't know that it's a brilliant tactic, but just because it didn't work, I don't know. I don't feel it doesn't feel consistent with the Stokes aggressive methodology in general. It feels a bit defensive, but I think maybe today it looked worse because of how well West Indies batted and how flat the wicket is. So I don't want to go overboard on it, but I'm still thinking about it really.
I mean, is there a sense that under Stokes have been slightly better at bowling against the tail in these sort of situations than they were?
Again, you've got to not judge just by the results, haven't you? At the risk of saying stick to the processes, which I basically just have, haven't I? But do you remember was it Ranchi?
That India tour.
Where, to be fair, or was it Vizag? And the Indian keeper, Jarrell, put on quite a lot, changed the direction of that test. So it's not, of course, the first time. And in fact, actually, Grenada, De Silva batted well with the tail again. That's not under Stokes, of course. But in that game in India, Robinson dropped a catch, didn't he? And again, people batted well, and they're allowed to do that. That can happen. I think Shamar Joseph looks as if he's a guy with some talent, doesn't he? Number 11.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the funny thing is you go, as you say, you go through the previous overs bowling a certain way with the slips in and so on, and suddenly they all come out, and yet Shamar Joseph's number 11. He could easily nick one as well, but the tactics just change so quickly, don't they?
They do. There were quite a lot of things going on there, to be fair. Wokes had bowled, we work out, as a 10 over spell. He needed to come off, probably, didn't he? I do think they go to the short ball a bit readily. But yeah, I don't want to be that harsh on it. It felt frustrating and stuff, but I do think that it's a flat wicket and West Indies batted well.
Okay, Danny Franklin asks, should 416 runs be worth more than 457 runs if they were scored at a faster strike rate, at the very least on a moral level?
It's a great question and tongue-in-cheek question. And of course, no. It's interesting though, isn't it? Was 4-1-16 a good score? I mean, I still don't think it was. I still think that it doesn't just have to be about batting the day, 5-day games, you were allowed to bat until, I don't know, tea on the second day. One of the games I looked up, maybe I mentioned this yesterday, was the West Indies in 76. And, some of those games they were batting 180 overs. And they were a very aggressive side, a very good side. There's no harm in doing that. You don't have to go and, it doesn't have to be in 50 all the time. I don't know. It's about balance. There's a lot to like about this England side, obviously, but just a little bit of balance. I think they might have scored 550 or 600 or something, and then still have put West Indies under pressure. It's a flat wicket.
I suppose the only other thing to say is that they do, usually at Trent Bridge, days 2 and 3 are the best time to bat. So maybe you could argue that 416 after being put in, they would argue wasn't bad. But they left runs out there, didn't they? I mean, we all thought that, didn't we?
Yeah, but it put in because, in some ways, if there was going to be anything, it might be early. And an acknowledgement that a lot of test wickets don't deteriorate much anymore. So I wouldn't read too much into that. It's not like they're putting on a snake pit and it's darting everywhere or anything, is it?
True, absolutely. Michael Penhale asks, so it's another day of pretty 50s and 60s, but no scores of real substance. The conversion rate doesn't seem to bother Baz, but should it?
Well, I think there's a good point wrapped up in there. I'd have to say, Ollie Pope got 100 in the first innings. Harry Brook has batted well here. I mean, he's not out overnight. Who knows? So while acknowledging all that, I think you still make a really good point, Michael. And I think it should bother them, and I don't suppose it does. And, I will use words like ruthless, and they'll think that's old-fashioned and negative. And you make your choice. I don't know. Well, you make your own mind up, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, was it Crawley before the start of the game? He was asked about his conversion rate, and he said it's more about how the team, as you'd expect him to say, it's more about how the team do. But there would have been Test batsmen of previous vintages who would have really valued getting centuries, wouldn't they? And I'm sure they value it.
I can't remember who we mentioned yesterday. Did we mention Jeffrey Boycott? Jeffrey Boycott, good luck to you. Recovering, and that's great. He would have been mortified, to have missed out, to have got 60 or 70 in these conditions. He'd have seen it as a huge opportunity to get a really big score. I don't think that mentality is bad at all. I often think of, Jeffrey and I have similar views on quite a lot of things, and
not everything, I suppose.
No, not everything. No, of course not. But big fan of Jeffrey and really wish him well. Say that again. But I think that there are some things that the modern game does so well, and it is very entertaining, but there are some things it's lost, and just being hungry. I think someone replied to this yesterday, sent me a tweet this morning and said it wasn't Alistair Cook they missed, it was Joe Root, and whoever said that, that's spot on, I think. But of course Joe Root's here, but what you meant, I think, was old Joe Root, ruthless Joe Root, and the Joe Root who got a double hundred in Manchester 8 years ago, whatever it was.
Work of art that was.
Yeah, absolutely. But it doesn't always feel the need to play the big shots. And to be fair, the Joe Root who's played this innings, I think, I still think there's a bit of room for that. I do, but clearly I do, and clearly they don't. And what do I know? They're the experts. Whoever wrote, by the way, the point about Joe Root, spot on.
Sheffield Outlaw asks, any sympathy for Crawley today? An unfortunate or an unnecessary dismissal?
I think it can be both. I do think it's unfortunate. Okay, but I also think it's a little bit sloppy. So I did some research on this. I did some research on this years ago. So I was writing about Warwickshire, Birmingham Post, and they had a season where there were no stumpings, and I think there were two dismissals like that run out, back it up. And it, it's a possibility, and bowlers do practice it. So you wouldn't want to be too critical, would you? Because it's still a bit unlucky. It can be both things, yeah?
I suppose the only thing you'd say is that you're taught when you're backing up to have momentum towards that striker's end. And if you're hanging back all the time and you're lacking that momentum for the run, that's also negative.
It's not binary, is it? It's not. You don't have to be hanging back to have to be moving and have your left hand in his case on the bat. He's vast. He could still be 2 meters down the wicket with his bat in his ground. And I think go back to the other question. Sometimes it doesn't feel they're quite hungry enough. There's masses to like about this England side, very entertaining, very talented. But, greed and hunger. I'll go back to the Warwickshire thing, bit niche, but I used to watch Nick Knight and Mark Waugh, the Warwickshire, Nottinghamshire Mark Waugh, open the batting together. And I still think Mark Waugh was the more talented player. And I just remember them quite often getting to 50. Mark Waugh might get caught at mid-on trying to hit over the top, and Nick Knight would grind out 100. And to some extent, I think he wanted it more, and that's why he had that fantastic career. And Mark Waugh didn't end up playing for England, and I think he probably should have done. Hunger, determination, they still matter. And I'd love those guys to be a bit more hungry. Now, they think it would change the way they play. And I would say, as I just did to you, these things don't have to be binary. It's about balance. It's all about balance, isn't it? So, I find that a bit frustrating, but I do see improvements. I think Ben Duckett's played beautifully. He's gone up a level in the last year. He's played, saw him get 200 for Nottinghamshire this year. And that, and the 100 he got in India, wow, they were a level of which I'd never seen him play before. And I think he looks that good again here. He's got best part of 150 runs in the match. It's fantastic.
Higher strike rate has opened than Virender Sehwag. I mean, it's just incredible. That's the guy that set the benchmark for batting like that at the top of the order.
Absolutely, it is incredible. He doesn't have the average of Virender Sehwag, but he is doing well. These are, and he's doing it in England quite often. It's pretty amazing. But yeah, you'd love to see him get. Generally, it's hundreds and not 70s, which define Test cricket, isn't it? Still, particularly on
pitches like
slightly old school wickets like this. Yeah. So I still think there's a way. So going back to the question, do you know what? I'm a little bit reluctant to say what I think because I'm always worried that these things now will get cut. No criticism of the brilliant people who do that job.
We're all just doing our jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. But I have to be a bit careful because if I say I think it's a little bit sloppy, it just becomes a headline. And I do think it is a little bit, though. But at the same time, I do think it's a bit unlucky. And I genuinely think you can have both things at once.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to be. He's not going to get a bollocking from any coach in history for that, is he?
Well, what was it?
But he is vast, and
Sussex?
he can keep his.
Was it Sussex last year that
yeah.
Farbrace gave them a volley for one of the players for getting out like that a couple of times?
I'm not sure it's Farby.
Was it, oh,
No, I think it might be Grant Flower.
Okay, yes, apologies.
And that is
Second
really,
apology I've had to do in 24 hours.
No, really interesting because I reckon Andy Flower would be interesting to ask about that. Very different methodology in that England side, but they did go to number one in the world, and this side is bottom of the World Test Championship.
But a lot of them did collapse after a while.
Absolutely. So they were hothoused, weren't they? And if you put any player in that situation for too long, it would probably. I don't know. But yeah, right. The lifespan is shortened. And England at the end of that 13-14 Ashes, they were broken. You know, mentally or physically, they were broken. But they did win in Australia. They did win in India. They did get a number one in the world. So again, it's good. It's a dull answer, but it comes down to balance, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Tamashai asks, so is 35-year-old Chris Woakes now the leader of the pack?
I don't know. Is that what the question is? I don't know. Honestly, as a huge Chris Woakes fan, I suspect that is a position vacant. Don't you?
Well, yeah, I suppose it is. But then I was thinking actually while he was in the press conference, I unfortunately didn't have time to ask the question, but things like choosing the replacement ball, stuff like that, choosing the new ball. Presumably he now has, where that was once Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad, presumably now his word carries a greater weight now than it would have done.
Yeah. Hey, is the question of the guy who asked the question about changing balls, is that on our list?
No.
Well, no, I think we should talk about that. I thought it raised a really good point.
Yeah.
The point was that they change balls so often, particularly the Dukes in the last few years, that it's become a sort of arbitrary, odd factor in the game. And it's huge. It's huge because the balls behave wildly differently at times.
There's no regulation behind it.
Very little regulation about it. It's generally the discretion of the umpires. I think most people in England would say that we really love the Duke's ball. It creates entertaining cricket. It's really hard to defend it if you need 4 or 5 new ones for every sort of 80 overs. Yeah. You know, it's got to be a bit better than this.
Do we know why they appear to be going out of shape more than they used to?
Well, a couple of years ago they had a malfunctioning. They had a problem which I think they say they've got to the bottom of, but have they? When Kookaburra are making a very sustained attempt to provide the balls in England, it feels really dangerous to be to have this many issues, and also to have such an important element of the game, which is sort of so unregulated and so hidden from the public. You know, you have to be watching really closely to tell when they're going to change the ball or when they've changed the ball. And you know, you saw at times in this game it's made a massive difference. And it feels like a sort of, it's not gamesmanship exactly, and you'd be a fool if you didn't try to do it. But it feels as if they need to do a bit more to standardise, I think, all sorts of things in cricket. And that is an area that seems ripe for further research. And you're right, whoever asked, that we probably ought to examine it more. Yeah.
And you obviously watch a lot of England overseas as well. Do you recall that this sort of stuff happens with other balls overseas?
I don't remember it happening as much with the SG or the Kookaburra. No, I don't. But then the Kookaburra in particular, look, I don't find it as fun a ball. I don't think it does as much sideways.
Because that one really did when they changed that one today.
But the conditions were also very different from last night. Yeah. When Chris Woakes started to bowl well, it was when it became. You can see, you know, how overcast it is here in Nottingham today. It's been like this all day. And if you looked at our videos from the first day in particular, you'd have seen it was blue skies behind us. So that seems to make a big difference as well. I know some people dispute the science behind there, but there's quite a lot of factors. But I still love the Duke's ball and the idea of the Duke's ball, that it keeps bowlers in the game. I still think, to be honest, the game is more entertaining when the bowler's slightly on top.
Yeah.
And in this game, the batter's quite a lot and still been entertaining, but the batters quite a lot on top.
But it's very much a point that needs more scrutiny, I think.
And it's skillful bowling. You know, Adelaide, perhaps the best test ground in the world, but I find the cricket there can be a little bit boring sometimes. You know, you get very, very large scores. Or Hamilton, you know. It's horrendous.
Mount Maunganui was another one, wasn't it? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm being a bit misremembering.
But I think anyway, it's a different style, and people have different views, and that's fine, and different tastes. But the Kookaburra can be less responsive to swing, and I think swing and seaming as well is a joy and really entertaining. But you know, there are different ways of doing things, and other people have other views. I've rambled terribly there, haven't I?
But the point is still a solid one.
Yeah, well, I don't think that.
Sure, we know what the point was.
I'm not sure I answered the question at all. Well, I think I've had a shot.
No, but I think the general point of the balls keep getting changed, and we need to find out why.
Yeah, I know, but no one even asked that.
No, they didn't.
What was the actual
We
question?
got there in the end. It's dug in there somewhere, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Anyway, right, last question. Love for Windies asks, why is Shamar Joseph's speed so down on a few months ago? Obviously, you're probably thinking about that famous match at the Gabba.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer. I mean, he's had quite a long time out of the game. It looked to me today, I mean, we talked about it, didn't we? He was running in hard. And to be honest, I don't have access to a TV here. So I didn't see what the speeds were, but I understand they're not quite as high. Look, he's a really young player, isn't he? Really quite an experienced player. And you'll get some inconsistency. I don't know that they've got the balance right between the amount of cricket he's playing yet. Mark Wood seems to be fantastic when he's fresh and just come in, having not bowled and hit 97 miles an hour, which is freakish. But most bowlers like quite a lot of bowling behind them, and he hasn't had that. So I think he's worth persevering with. I don't think it's gone, but it is interesting. But it might just be a little adjustment as he finds his way, and there might be. You see, I don't know the answer to the question, to be honest, but I imagine that there's fine-tuning his action all the time. And very often bowlers take a step back to go 2 steps forwards, and he might be in that phase. But look, he's a beautiful mover. He's obviously got the talent and the mentality to thrive at this level. I thought you saw that with the bat even today. And they're going to have to stick with him. I mean, it would be disappointing if you were asking that question in 2 years or so. You know, Shamar Joseph, for all that talent, and clearly, you know, he bowls great balls, doesn't really feel he's kicked on, does he? Which is a bit of a worry. I mean, I think he's the vice captain of this side. He's played quite a lot of cricket at this stage, and he's very similar to the bowler we first saw. So there would be that question to be asked about West Indies, but I think bearing in mind how young a player he is in his international cricket career, it's a bit early, and I think you just sort of bear with him at this stage.
I guess we're all sort of sitting there waiting or hoping for him to produce one another of those amazing spells. But I mean, he did arrive late for the tour, didn't he? Because of the problems with the weather in the Caribbean. So who knows if he had that warm-up game
Well, I saw him bowling in middle practice in St Lucia a few weeks ago at the T20 World Cup, and I thought he looked lovely, just absolute class. Yeah, beautiful mover, loads of skills, and I was a bit surprised he didn't play, to be honest, particularly in St Lucia, which is a lovely quick wicket. But to be honest, I haven't asked those questions, don't know enough about what's going on with him and his career to give you a really informed answer. I'm sorry, it's taken a really, really long time to say I don't know.
But sometimes honesty is the best policy. And on that note,
I'm not sure.